Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching World Talks, coming to you live from Warsaw. In an interesting turn of events, the United States, led by President Donald Trump, has decided to provide weapons to Kyiv on the condition that they're paid for by European NATO members and Canada. This could drastically help Kyiv defend the skies over the capital and halt a summer Russian offensive. Also, Donald Trump has given Vladimir Putin 50 days to reach a ceasefire, or else secondary sanctions will be placed on countries buying Russian energy, slapping them with 100% import duties. The move, if realized, would be most consequential for China and India. And now, joining me here to discuss the impacts of these decisions is Garvan Walshe, CEO of Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats. Hello, Garvan. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Hello and good evening.
Now, let's go ahead and start off with a soundbite from Donald Trump regarding Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir called me up. He said, I'd love to help you with respect to making a deal with a couple of them, like Iran. I'd love to help you. I say, Vladimir, I only want to help with one deal, Russia, because you're the only deal that we're not doing too well on. And he oftentimes he said, no, he wants me. And I think he does. I hope he does. We're going to find out soon. And it could be before the 50 days.
Now, Garvan, this is probably the second or third time that we've heard Donald Trump say similar things about his conversations with Vladimir Putin. Traditionally, we've heard about tapping Trump along, yet Donald Trump has advocated to give him another 50 days. It's also come out on via the media that on a July 3rd phone call, Vladimir Putin told Donald Trump that he needs 60 days to accomplish his goals, and that is trying to maximize taking those 4 occupied regions in Ukraine. Based on these somewhat contradictory statements by Donald Trump, what can we expect within these 50 days? Will we get another extension because Vladimir Putin makes a small step towards Donald Trump's direction?
Well, I mean, you don't really see Donald Trump expending great effort to do anything when it comes to this conflict. That's why he likes the idea of the Europeans buying American weapons to sort things out. He likes the idea of giving Putin time, because all of this means he doesn't have to, in his view, give up anything. He can just wait to see this play out. He's a bit frustrated, clearly, that he hasn't been able to bring an end to the war because he'd promised it, and he said something is going unwell, which is very unusual for Donald Trump. He normally likes to say everything is fantastic, even when it isn't. But I don't think we should read too much into this contradiction, just that Trump really wants to get America out of this conflict, and he sees that if the Europeans buy American Patriots or other American equipment, then that's fine by him. It supports the American economy. And it allows Europe to take control of this, which is really what's driving the administration. They want to get out of Europe. They want to leave Europe to deal with Russia on their own. And then if Trump can manage to do some kind of deal with Putin, that's great, but that's really a secondary to getting out of the European theater.
Right. Well, let's talk about those weapons first, because this is the significant development. And, we've seen the weapons shipments cut off 3 times in this new administration, and now the potential to buy American weapons by the Europeans, potentially Canada even participating as well. Which weapon systems do you think are on the table here, and how effective and how timely will they make it to Ukraine?
The most important ones are air defense missiles. The Patriot system is the most widely deployed system able to knock out ballistic missiles that the Russians continually attack Kyiv with. The Europeans do have another system, the SAM-T, but they don't have it up in sufficient production to be able to make up the shortfall of a lack of American weaponry. So they need the Patriots for the moment, otherwise it would be very hard for them to defend against Russian aerial attacks with ballistic missiles. We see Ukraine's been making progress in defending against drones. They have a lot of homegrown systems that are now able to take drones out, but there's still a gap when it comes to ballistic missile defense. And this is a gap that the United States is currently best placed to meet. The other possibility is things like HIMARS. This is the rocket systems that are used to provide deep strike into Russian territory. They're not as critical as they used to be, partly because Russia's adapted to disperse its forces away from them, but also because Ukraine's now got significantly more powerful deep strike capabilities of its own. It has its own cruise missiles, its own drones, and other kinds of attacks, like the brilliant coup against Russian strategic aviation that they carried out with drones and the use of their intelligence services.
Yeah, spectacular attack. Now, we've heard about the $10 billion. Do you think that this has already been pledged by the European states? And as we get to potentially more weapons packages, is support for paying for these packages likely to dry up potentially here in Europe?
I mean, the best way to pay for these packages is not actually to buy weapons from the United States, because they're pretty expensive. It's to make those weapons in Ukraine. The Ukrainian arms industry has spare capacity. What it needs is orders, and they have a very can-do attitude for obvious reasons. They're able to run production around the clock. They've built facilities underground to protect them from attack, and this is what the Danes are doing. They're buying equipment of their own and buying equipment in Ukraine, so that the Ukrainians can then have it straight to the front. It's paid for by Europeans, but it's built in Ukraine's own very capable defense industry.
And we talked about the Patriot missiles. I mean, we see lots of drone attacks, Shahed drone attacks on Kyiv. Will Patriots be used for these, or just ballistic and cruise missiles? And what options are there for the capital to protect itself against these Shahed drones?
Shahed drones can be taken out by shorter range anti-missile systems like the ones the British are supplying. They're supplying thousands of them. And also by anti-aircraft guns. These things aren't much more advanced than things that were available in World War II, and they can be met by World War II era technology, provided it's augmented with targeting and AI to help hit the targets more effectively and deal with the numbers of attacks, because they can swarm these drones at a city, and then this can overwhelm the air defense systems. But we've seen a lot of adaptation in air defense too, and we're seeing automated targeting systems being attached to older anti-aircraft systems, and they've been able to shoot down an awful lot of the Shaheds. Aircraft, Ukraine now has F-16s and several other platforms, and these are able to shoot down Shaheds pretty easily. They can also deal with longer-range cruise missiles that aren't quite as hard to hit as ballistic missiles, but they're harder to hit than Shaheds. Russia also has those, though in limited numbers. And really, the use of this money should be confined to buying anti-missile missiles, and probably only done until such time as the SAMP-T can be deployed in Ukraine in numbers, and then we won't even have to rely on anything from the Trump administration.
Now, if we look at the Eastern Front, there is movement. Russia had its best month in May since February of 2022 as far as advances go. Some people say that an offensive is already underway. It's currently underway. Others say that it's going to become underway very soon. But if we look at the weapons that potentially could come from the United States, is there anything that can help Ukraine stop the bleeding and stop the Russian advances in the east?
I don't think the U.S. weapons are really going to make a difference there. What makes a difference there is being able to deal with the fiber optic drones that Russia has been launching. It's these cut off logistics and force Ukrainians to retreat. On the other hand, Ukraine has been able to now protect its front line using drones, using very, very few men. And Ukraine's biggest shortage in this war is actually manpower. So that sort of worked on both sides. Russia is making advances, but they're at extremely heavy cost. In the last 2 months, I think they've lost 30,000 men. They seem to be able to keep up these numbers, but the quality of Russian troops seems to be going down. More older men, more men in poorer physical health, and it's hard to make a significant advance with this kind of force structure. You are seeing small retreats by the Ukrainians, but you're not seeing the front collapsing. You're seeing them exact an extremely heavy price for every inch of territory that Russia gains, and it is mostly inches that Russia is gaining. So we're not seeing the kind of aggressive Russian advance that many might have feared. It's not clear that the Russians are able to do that right now. Some even think that the current advance that has been described as a summer offensive may be close to culmination. It's too early to really say whether that's actually happening, but we're really seeing a kind of grinding, slow Russian advance, and the Ukrainians are inflicting extremely heavy damage on the Russians as they do that.
Well, according to Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin has 50 days to make a decision and make a ceasefire with Ukraine. If not, secondary sanctions to the tune of 100% on countries that buy Russian energy, particularly China and India. If indeed Trump follows through with that threat, and it does go through, how will this disrupt Russia's war machine and its ability to continue to wage war against Ukraine?
I think it's relevant particularly for India, because China has already been subject to such high American tariffs that trade is largely stopped. But it could concentrate the minds of the Indians. If the US really wants to make this happen, then they need to think about ensuring that India can get alternative sources of energy, because physical trade between India and the United States is not huge. There's a lot of services trade, there are a lot of Indian IT outsourcers that do major business with the Americans, but it's going to be hard for those kind of secondary sanctions to affect India. They might also affect parts of Europe, where the ban on Russian gas importing is slowly going to come into place. But you have countries like Austria and Slovakia that are still pretty heavily dependent on Russian hydrocarbons, and it would be a good thing to be able to cut those things off.
Indeed it would. Garvan Walshe, CEO of Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thank you all for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP1.